Hello Game of Apps students, how are you doing? Hope you're doing well. This video is a companion video for the Android project that you're going to be working on called Choices. And this companion video is for week 2 of this project. So first I'm going to show you how the whole app is going to work once we finish the next 4 weeks. And then I'm going to show you how the app works once you finish the activity for week 2. All right, and then we'll go through the code and I'll explain a little bit about how the code works. All right, so let's jump right into it. Okay, so first we have here the app. So again, this is how the app's going to be once we've completed all the next 4 weeks. All right, so we have here on top a start button, and you can see the start button up here, and here, let me just you see the mouse and stuff. We have here on the start button, and you see that it's labeled start. We have a score that's currently 0, a level that's currently 1, and this sentence here that says question comes here. We have 4 buttons, each labeled with an option. And if we click on those buttons right now, nothing happens because the game hasn't started yet. Now, if we click on start, then the game starts, and this changes to the question, 1 + 1 =. And we can answer that. So let's say we answer it correctly, 2. All right, so now level goes up to 2, so we're at the next level, and score is 1. That means we got the right answer, so we have 1 point. So here, let's answer wrongly. Okay, so I answered the wrong answer, and level has gone up, but score remains at 1. Then what is the water content of a watermelon? Let's answer it wrongly again. And now this button has now gone back to start. So that means the game has ended. Score is 1. Level says 4, and it tells us the result. Question 1 we got correct. 2 and 3 we got incorrect. We can start the game again, and it resets all the values here. Scores back to 0, levels back to 1. So now we can answer this. So we can answer it correctly. So we got 1 point. Let's say I want to stop the game. I can stop it here. And then now these buttons do nothing. Okay, but I can start the game again. And then I can go on and play the game again. All right, so that's how it's going to be once we finish the next 4 weeks. Now let's take a look at how it's going to look after we finish this week. So week 2. And let me just change this here and you can see that. All right, so when we finish week 2, it's going to look like this. The button will just say stop because it actually does nothing. And we still have a score and level, but now it says press any option below to start. So we need to press one of these buttons to start the game. All right, so now I've pressed this 1 + 1. Let's say it's 2, but let's say we get the wrong answer. Now if we click on the wrong answer, nothing happens. Okay. Once we click on the right answer, then it moves to the next level. Level goes up to 2. Okay. The score hasn't changed though. So 3 × 4 = 12, 14 is the right answer. We move up to level 3, but the score doesn't change. Okay, so for this week, we haven't implemented score yet. Now we're at level 3 and it's all blank. And actually, it'll keep moving up levels, although the game is over. Okay, stop doesn't do anything. All right, so that's what we're going to be building for this week. All right, so now let's take a look at the code and how that works. All right, so just give me 1 second here. Okay, so once you download this project and you run it in Android Studio, it's going to look like this. All right, the stop and start button doesn't do anything, and if you press on any of these buttons, nothing happens because you need to implement that to start the game. All right, so let's take a look at the code now. Okay, at the very top, you're going to see a number of variables. These two variables here, level view and question view. They're both text views. They refer to this here, the 0, that's the level view, and this question view, that's this sentence right there. All right. So we'll talk more about that in the following weeks, when you need to set that. But just so you understand, these 4 variables here, buttons 1, 2, 3, and 4, refer to this one. So this is button 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. Now we have a function. Oh, the first thing you have to do here is you're supposed to define a member variable named level of type int. Okay, so you're supposed to define a variable called level, and what that variable is going to be used is going to keep track of this here, what level we're on, right? So initially it's level 0. So as we move that up, oh, Siri's talking to me. Just give me 1 second here. Let's do not disturb. Okay. All right. So, yeah, so we need to have a member variable called level, and that's an int. And then now we have this function here called onCreate. Okay. So what onCreate does is it's a function that Android calls after this whole screen is created. This screen is called an activity in Android. So after an activity is created, it'll call this function onCreate, and it allows you to put in code here that you want to be executed immediately after your activity or your screen is created. Now in this week's exercise, you don't need to do anything. We've put in the necessary code to get this working, but just to get you going to understand what's happening, here you'll see that we're doing something to question view and level view and button 1, 2, 3, and 4. And what we're doing is we're basically connecting these variables to the UI elements here. Okay, so we're connecting these UI elements to these Java variables. All right, so we'll learn more about that in subsequent weeks, but I just wanted to kind of let you know that in case you're wondering. Then the last line here is what's important. Set up for level 0. So when we first start off, we're going to set up this screen here for level 0. Okay, so we're going to start off with level 0. Now, what does setup for level 0 do? So let's take a look at the next function, and that's this function, setup for level. So setup for level takes in one parameter. It's a level, and the value of that level is the level that we want to set up the screen for. All right. So the first thing we do here is we display that level. So remember, level view is this one here. So it's going to display whatever level that we're setting up for. So if we're currently level 0, it'll show 0. If we're currently level 1, it'll show 1 here. All right. So now we initialize 6 variables here. Initially, they're all empty strings. And the 6 variables are question, answer, option 1, 2, 3, and 4. So question is the question that we want to display here. Answer is the correct answer. And then options 1, 2, 3, and 4 are the values that we want to display on these buttons. All right. Now let's move on. So now we have a big if statement here, and this if basically checks what level we're at. So if we're at level 0, then what do we want to do? We want to set our question to be this. Press any option below to start, which is what we see here. Okay. So if we're in level 1, then it shows us the question for level 1, 1 plus 1 equals, and it tells us that the correct answer should be 2. And then the next lines here will set the values for that we want to display on these buttons, the option 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you're supposed to fill in what option 1 is, so you can come up with any value you want. Option 2 will be 1, so the value 1 will be shown here. Option 3 will be answer. We knew that the answer is 2, so 2 will be displayed here. Then option 3 will be whatever value you want, so you have to fill that in there. All right. And then for level 2, you're supposed to fill that in yourself too, but we haven't provided you any initial value, so you're supposed to put in a value for question, answer, option 1, 2, 3, and 4, similar to what we did up here. Okay, so that'll be the question that you want displayed, as well as the answers that you want to give the user, show to the user there. And then optionally, if you want to set up additional levels, you can do that here by adding more else-if clauses. Okay, the last line in this function is this here called setup question, and it passes in the value for question, the value for option 1, 2, 3, and 4, and also the correct answer. All right, so what does a setup question do? Okay, we'll see that in a little bit, but first let's look at this move to next level. So move to next level presumably would be called once we finish the current level. So if we finished level 1, then we want to move to level 2. All right, so what do we do here? The first thing we need to do is we need to now increment the level variable that we set up earlier. So remember earlier, we were supposed to create a new variable here called level of type int. So that variable will keep track of what's our current level. So here, when we call move to next level, we want to increment that. So if currently that level is 1, then we want to increment it to 2. If it's currently 2, we want to increment it to 3, and so forth. All right, so once we've incremented that here, now we want to call setup for level. Okay, remember setup for level takes in one parameter, which is the current level. So if we call setup for level here, after we've incremented level, then it will call the function to tell them to set up the display here, set up the display for level 2. So if you're currently level 1, we're going to increment that to 2, and then we're going to call setup for level and pass in the value for the level, which is 2. So then it will update this display for level 2. All right. Okay, now setup for question. Remember, this was called up here, and it takes in the value for question and the 4 options, as well as the value for the answer. So what it does, the first line, it sets the text for the question view to the question. So it sets the value, displays the question here. So whatever question was passed in here, that's going to be displayed here. And then it's going to call setup option for the 4 buttons, setup option button. And it passes in the corresponding button variable, as well as the option, so the option that we wanted to be displayed on that button, as well as what the correct answer is. Now this will be the same, right? So what does that do? Let's take a look at the final function here. So setup option button. So again, it takes in the button, the option, which is the text we want to display on the button, as well as the correct answer. So what does it do? So this, whatever button we've passed in, we're going to set its display text to this value that we've passed in here. That's option. Okay. And then it's going to call set on click listener. So set on click listener basically tells the system that whenever this button is tapped, so let's say if this is button 1, then that corresponds to this button. So whenever that button is tapped, we're going to call this function, this on-click handler. All right, so what this does is it allows us to put in code that we want Android to execute whenever a button is pressed. Okay, so since we're calling that for each of the 4 buttons, then we're going to be setting up 4 on-click listeners, 1 for each one of the buttons. All right, so what do we want to do inside on-click here? After the button is tapped, we want to then compare to see if the value that's displayed on the button is equal to the answer. Okay, so if the value that's displayed on the button is equal to answer, so we have to do an if here to check if those two are equal to each other. Now remember, these are strings, all right? So you need to use dot equals. All right, so if those two are equal to each other, then what we want to do is we want to call next level. All right, so if the user tapped on the button corresponding to the right answer, then we move to the next level. If they tap on a button that's not the right answer, then we do nothing. So we stay at this level until they tap on the right answer. All right, so that kind of mirrors that should mirror what we just I showed you in the demo earlier. All right, so work through that. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask one of the mentors, or post it on Slack if it's during the week, and we'd be happy to help you. All right, so have a good day, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.